spent months in this fog, unsure of how to grapple with this fact that I could die and that it could happen at any moment. And eventually, what I realized was that to get the most out of life, I need to know myself. I need to decide what I want out of life. I need to determine what I value, and then I need to take steps towards that.
Welcome to Engage Presents. I'm Engage co-founder and president Jake Olson. In this interview series, I ask Engage talent the most common questions we hear from event planners to help you get to know them and their stories in 15 minutes or less. Thanks for listening. Welcome to another episode of Engage Presents. I'm Engage president Jake Olson. Alongside me today, a fascinating gentleman, Tom Turcich. He is one of very few people to walk around the world, and he's also obviously a motivational speaker, an author, an incredible human being. Can't wait to walk you through this one, and I say that deliberately, Tom, because again, of who you are and what you've been able to do, man, that's incredible. And as you hopped on, I already have so many questions in my head, but I just want to first ask probably the most simple question of them all is, what route did you take?
Yeah, so it was 7 years of walking, 28,000 miles. So it was a long, circuitous route from my front door back to my front door. The first year was New Jersey down to Panama City. Second year was Bogota down to Montevideo, Uruguay. I took a boat down to Antarctica, planted my feet on Antarctica, then walked Iceland, Ireland, Scotland, and then Denmark down to Spain, across Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, up Italy, along the Mediterranean, across Turkey, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan. And initially, the plan was to walk up to Mongolia and then Australia, but this was COVID. And I had been walking for 6.5 years at that point, and I thought, you know what, I think I've seen plenty, seen enough. I've done my due diligence. And so then I walked from Seattle back to my home in New Jersey.
Oh my goodness, that's incredible. So I think I read total 38 countries.
Yep, 38 countries. Yeah, exactly.
And
And
then
26 of them with, no, 27 of them with my dog, Savannah, the
I was
first
going to
dog to
say,
walk around the world.
my favorite part is with your dog, Savannah. So let's just walk through just kind of the highlights, if you will, just some of the memories that stand out, some of the places that stand out, just, briefly.
Sure. I mean, I could go, I wrote a book about it, so there's plenty of highlights to get into. But I would say one of the highlights is when Savannah and I were crossing the Andes from Chile into Argentina. And the crossing was 5 days without anything around through Altiplano at about 15,000 feet. And the first day we pushed from 6,000 feet in elevation from this little oasis town up to that 15,000. And my cart, which I held all my things in, was as weighed down with water as it had ever been. And so probably weighed well over 100 pounds. And I'm pushing it up 9,000 feet in elevation that first day. And then from then on, my body never really recovered. And I'm at altitude and I'm tired. And 4 days in, I find this place to sleep. Basically, in the middle of the Altiplano, there's just this little chain link fence around this pipe release. I tie my fence to it. I tie my tent to it. The wind is raging, and I slept maybe 2 hours. And then in the morning, I crawl out of my tent, as tired as I've ever been. I push my cart maybe 20 feet and then just collapsed face first into the sands, got nothing left in my legs. And I laid there for what felt like an eternity. And eventually, I'm like, all right, I need to gather my strength. I have 20 miles left to get to this little Argentinian outpost at the border. And so I turned over, and Savannah came and sat beside me. And when she did, it gave me this new perspective. It zoomed out my perspective. And then suddenly I saw myself from the bird's eye view looking down at myself in Savannah in the middle of the Altiplano, 15,000 feet up, 8,000 miles of walking from home, as tired as I'd ever been, pushed my body to the limit, and with a best friend by my side that I never imagined I'd have.
Yeah, well, that's so fascinating. You mentioned that moment and just that that can speak volumes to a lot of things. But you mentioned it. dreams since the age of 17. What really started kind of you wanting to take that journey, and what kind of purpose was behind it that pushed you in a moment like that?
Yes, I had a close friend die when I was 17. She died in this freak jet ski accident. And when she did, it really woke me up to life. And before then, I was just kind of coasting. And my friend Anne-Marie, who passed, was the nicest person I knew. And I know that's a sort of platitude, but for Emery, it was really true. And so when she died, it was this real realization that, oh man, if Emery can die, then so can I, so can my other friends, so can my family. And so then I spent months in this fog, unsure of how to grapple with this fact that I could die and that it could happen at any moment. And eventually, what I realized was that to get the most out of life, I need to know myself. I need to decide what I want out of life. I need to determine what I value, and then I need to take steps towards that. And so when I reflected on what I wanted out of life, I came to the answer that I wanted to travel. I wanted to be forced into adventure because I knew I was timid and introverted, and I wanted to grow out of that. And I wanted to understand the world. And then on top of that, I didn't have any money. So when I found someone who had walked around the world, it seemed like the solution to everything I wanted out of life. And then it was 8 years, 7, 8 years of saving, planning, going to school, paying off loans, living, working at home until I was able to take my first step.
Amazing. I'm sure during that time period there was doubt that, rises. Hey, is this smart? Is this safe? Is this really something that I should be doing? I'm sure people are kind of talking to you during those 9 years of, hey, that's a fun idea, but maybe you should more, do practically, consider a career and stuff. What went into those moments of, yeah, I understand all that, but I just want to get to the point where I can take that first step and do what really I believe into my heart to be true.
I think what it really came down to was knowing myself and knowing what I valued. And when you think about having one single life and a limited amount of time, a limited amount of energy, if you know what you value in life, then you know the things that you can do without.
Yeah.
And so it was the way I thought about my walk during those 8 years between when I first had the dream and then when I took my first step was I thought of it as a flag in my head, as this point to aim at. And all of my decisions could be measured against it. And so when a friend, say, invited me to the Dominican Republic for vacation, I wanted to go, but I knew if I went to the Dominican, that was $2,000 that was going to be spent not towards my loans that would then get me closer to having the money to walk around the world. So I think it was knowing what I valued and then having that flag to measure my decisions against that really clarified my decision making over those 8 years.
Yeah. Now let's talk about Savannah real quick. And this one definitely hits home with me. I had a guide dog of 14 years who, walked beside me, obviously, all that time. And he also passed away in 2024. So just kind of walk us through what that, meant to have a best friend next to you, walking with you. I always say people thought I was crazy because I always talked to Quebec, my guide dog, when I was walking. I'm sure you had many, many conversations with Savannah over the course of your journey. So just talk about what it meant to have Savannah by you and just, what that means now looking back on those memories.
Yeah, I mean, Savannah was the only constant I had over those 7 years. Savannah and I live this extreme version of just perpetual change every day. We're managing different weather. We're looking for a different place to sleep each night. We're dealing with a new culture. I'm managing a new language. And through all of that, I had Savannah next to me. And when the day was over and I would sit down at the end of the day in a pine forest or in the desert or on top of a mountain, wherever it was Savannah that was beside me. And the bond we formed is, I'm sure, like many other humans and their dogs, but also it was totally unique. I mean, Savannah's the first dog to walk around the world, and so by proxy, I'm the first person to walk around the world with a dog.
No.
And so we had this really incredible, unique relationship. And I think she taught me a lot about just doing a little bit every day, kind of regardless of how you feel, and then being okay with that and
Yeah.
setting the day aside. I remember when I was recovering from this bacterial infection, having this thought where I was really struggling to get through every day that I have no idea how Savannah's feeling. But every day she walks every mile with her tail held high, and then she goes to bed content at night. And so I was just then thinking, just try and be more like Savannah. Just put in a little work and set the day aside. And she taught me a million other things beyond that. And she was a great companion, but yeah, I can't express enough how much she means to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So now let's talk about speaking. You get to share your story, you share your journey. Kind of talk about what goes into the meaning behind you wanting to share that story, and kind of what purpose now are you fulfilling by doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of these problems that we face today is the paralysis of choice. This idea that in life, and especially today, you can go any direction you can imagine. And it can be really difficult to have a big dream and then stick to it. And so I really enjoy speaking to having a big dream and how to achieve it. It's as simple as that. And the speaking itself for me is especially enjoyable because I've been writing passionately since I was about 21,
Mhm.
and I've written a million drafts of bad science fiction novels that ultimately led to me getting published and my memoir getting published and selling very well and working on a second book now. And
Yeah,
so I really enjoy the craft of speaking and creating this narrative of my journey and tying in practical lessons on how to live a beautiful life, how to be okay with living one life, and how to maximize that one life. So it's this real passion that I have sort of obsessed over since Anne-Marie died is that question of how do I live a beautiful life? And now speaking is this culmination of getting to share that message.
that's beautiful. And just kind of, working off that, what is kind of that one take home message that you do hope people leave with?
Begin, take one step, even if you even if your dream is impossibly distant, every time you take that first step, whether it's going for a run when you're tired or opening a book or starting a conversation, every time you take that first step, it's this profound proof that you believe in yourself,
Yeah,
that you are that you believe that you're capable in adapting to change and that you are capable of becoming more than you are in this moment. So just begin. Take that first step.
Tom, thank you so much for giving us that message and that simple reminder. Definitely, you are someone who did take that first step, and it's amazing to see what can be accomplished when you do that, walking around the entire world. So thank you for sharing a little bit with us. If you want to learn more about Tom's story, obviously hear more of his stories that he has. He mentioned in his book, but you can obviously book him to speak. You can do that at letsengage.com and check out his profile there. Tom, I have so many other questions. I want to hear you speak soon because, again, there's just so much that we could probably unpack in this. But thank you for the time you've given us today.
Thanks for having me, Jake. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Stay tuned for more Engage Presents.